All right, how's it going, everybody? This is Zach. You're listening to Anything at All, and today I got a special guest, long life friend, known him since probably birth. My good friend Isaac. How's it going?
Doing good, doing good.
So we had this conversation a while back on a topic we should discuss, and that was how the film industry, I guess, or the film quality, I guess, how would you put it? Film quality
The quality of film has degraded over the years.
degrade. Yes, because we grew up and in probably when we were 9 or 10, Lord of the Rings came out, and obviously we were fascinated or what's the word, factuated,
Infatuated.
infatuated, yeah, with Lord of the Rings, as we were, Star Wars, growing up and all those things. But looking at Lord of the Rings now and how they hold up to the films of today, we were just talking about how it's just kind of, there's something missing. There's something missing in how people or films are made, right?
Well, yeah. I think there's no genuine stories anymore. I had a professor. I went to school down in Redlands, California, and it was a junior college, but all the professors who went there were from high-end universities. They were trying to donate back to a community college by donating their time
Mm-hmm.
to kind of teach people at a higher caliber than you'd normally get at a community college.
Right.
So, anyways, I had this history and art professor, and his brother-in-law was the head for the storyboard for DreamWorks, the production company. So, anyways, he had his brother-in-law come in and do an entire night on film, and it was extremely eye-opening. Um, and
How
what it
so?
was he says traditionally we take a story
Mm-hmm.
that the public was familiar with. We take a story that had already been exposed to the public, and then they would adapt it to film. And he says what they've done now is, everybody now has a price tag. So the writer has a price tag, the producer has a price tag, the actors have a price tag, a value.
Yep.
So say like J.J. Abrams, he has a value of 350,000, and Hans Zimmer has a value of $250,000, for music.
Right.
And then you get an actor like Robert Downey Jr.
Oh, the C.
Yeah. See, then you get say he's got a value of $500,000.
Right.
So they start stacking the thing together, and
Like a
they go,
recipe.
okay, was based on their value. If we put all this together, will it produce something that will make us money? And so they put the whole thing together, and they push it out, and the writer is the one who comes up with the story, but then the production company says, well, you have to have this, 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 and this because it responds this way. And it became a business.
Yep.
And they became very good at pushing things out. And at first, the public responded, and it was like, ooh, wow, ooh, wow, ooh, wow. We were just enamored because, the film industry was progressing and so forth, and the quality was getting better and better and better and better with the films and the CGI. Well,
Mm-hmm.
we kind of hit a pinnacle,
It's all about the
and now
visual.
all of a sudden, the visual is no longer what's so meaningful. All of a sudden, now it's the actual story, and so now they've come back into that realm of now we actually have to have a legit story. We have to actually have something that connects with people. We can't just plug it all together and push it out. And I think that's why people are starting to disconnect from that.
Right.
I think also they're disconnecting because of social media.
Oh, yeah.
I think the attention, all the dopamine addictions that you get from that stuff has made it so that, up and coming films are not exciting. Like you and I'm stoked to go see the Joker movie with Joaquin Phoenix.
Yeah. Oh,
just
sure.
because I really like Joaquin Phoenix, his style, and I also like the whole Joker. There's a nostalgia about it because I watched the Christopher Nolan Batman series,
right?
And that
It's a familiar character.
The Heath Ledger Joker was phenomenal. There's a bit of a nostalgia there. They did a phenomenal job on that series. But you compare that to, say, what they did after that, when they decided to try and do the Man of Steel series and so forth. And
well, and so
I've been a big.
That's the thing is, like, okay, if we were to now, let's take a few steps back to, like, Lord of the Rings. So, Lord of the Rings was fairly unknown except for the books, and then you get to how they began to start to make the films. They took that gamble on shooting all three of them back to back with a multi-million-dollar budget, and yet there wasn't. Today I feel like if someone was to take that risk, a lot of production companies would not be willing to take that risk unless it's something that has been like the Marvel movies and stuff that have a formula that will sell. I mean, and you can even look at the new Star Wars films, right? How they're so, no pun intended, so forced in the way of visual. Is it all CGI? Is it cool looking? You bring in the well-known characters like Han Solo, and you try to throw them against the wall with a new story, with all this, new effects. With you bring in the director J.J. Abrams, like everyone knows and stuff. Are you boiling something there? But
yeah.
So the point is that Lord of the Rings took that gamble. No one knew about it, and then you have these three movies that stand. I could be wrong. Stand against the test of what's been made after it since 2003. Because then, you go right after 2003, you get into those Christopher Nolan films, and then you start to see how all of a sudden the film industry is like, oh, well, that worked, let's just keep recycling it. And then all of a sudden you're left with this, like The Last Jedi. You're like, what? Here you have the director trying to flip the script on things as far as what's known. And then you're like, well, I could see how he thought, I got to change it up because it's kind of like what we're talking about, how it's almost repetitive in the sense of the way films have been made. And then you get an audience that hates it. And so we're seeing this like pullback, and like what DC was doing with those, the Justice League was just slapped against the wall. And,
I recently just watched Wonder Woman.
Yeah.
And again, they begin the whole story. And, they weren't doing half bad setting everything up and so forth. And, it keeps going. And I go back to, because I really think it's one of the best examples of it, of taking something previously that was such a good story, the story had been told and developed, and it was a very good story. like Lord of the Rings. Lord of the Rings was a well polished story, and they took it and they made it very real. And I think the other thing with Lord of the Rings is like you're talking about with the budget. It's you need to compress. You need to compress things because the best things are produced out of necessity and need.
Yes.
And so, what I think is going back to Man of Steel, the very first Man of Steel. I was like ecstatic when I found out that was going to happen.
Yep.
Saw the first trailer for that when the last Batman, Christopher Nolan Batman series with Christian Bale came out. And I was ecstatic because I had just come off of watching the Smallville series that they had done, which was Clark Kent leading all the way up to becoming Superman.
Right.
And then I had watched the original black and white and color cartoons of Superman, the original ones from the 50s, 50s and 60s. And, and so I grew up watching those. I didn't really get into the John Williams ones. I watched Superman Returns, but there's some people that absolutely love those films. But so there was a nostalgia there. And, you bring in somebody like Russell Crowe, who comes from The Gladiator and things like that. And, there's a nostalgia about him. And then you've got,
popular.
Zack Snyder. And you bring it together.
Recipe thing that you're talking about.
Right. And they bring it together, and they're like, oh, these people all came from films that had stories it was a well-told story.
Yeah.
And so everybody's going, hey, this has got some potential. And the movie starts out, and it's phenomenal. And it gets all the way through, and then they get through this fight scene back at Smallville. And they get through the whole thing, and the military shows up and all that stuff. And right after that, the whole movie went to crap.
Yep.
It blew up into this forced, PC
CGI.
CGI. It was horrible. And then I never even watched the other films beyond that point. And it was, and then.
So why is that? Why did you stop at that point? Was it like you just discouraged, or was it, was something missing to the formula there compared to the beginning of the film, or the Lord of the Rings and everything?
The story has to. The story has to give you an emotional connection.
Exactly.
That's the big thing about films.
Yep.
And music. They do the same thing. They have to have an emotional connection. They don't connect with you emotionally. Whatever emotion that is, that best relates to a scenario where you felt that emotion, that it relates to, you're not going to connect with people. One of the, and when you use them together, I think of in Lord of the Rings when they lose Gandalf in the Mines of Moria and they come out. They use that track when everybody comes out of the mines and everybody's dealing with loss. Everybody has dealt with loss at some point.
And unexpected loss, too, for that. You don't expect to lose Gandalf halfway through the film. Especially,
and so it builds.
You get that sense of like a father role with Gandalf as like the leader, right? And then so you take that away. Now you're left with this group of people that were on a mission, and now there's, obviously that was the low point in the film's arc, and they do that well.
Mm-hmm.
They do that part well instead of, it's not like you said, like that forced. Or a lot of films, I feel like they skip all that and they don't follow that film arc that is so key to why
Mm-hmm.
we get, like you said, get attached. Which is why I think the Fellowship is one of my favorites, is because you get to know the characters and get attached to them when all things are good, and they're sent on this mission where they don't know, and the audience doesn't know how trivial it's going to get. And then when you have that shocking moment when Gandalf goes, then you're like, what? And you're hooked. And then you the characters, you're with them
Yeah.
because they got to prevail. Whereas you have Superman, who he's got super strength. Nothing's really going to kill him. And for what he stands for, fights for, maybe, I guess
They could have, I was going to say, like in the Man of Steel situation, if they could have married the ending of Superman Returns with the beginning of Man of Steel, they could have somehow put those two movies together.
Right.
They could have had something, because the Superman Returns, the beginning of the film, starts with an opening really cool, catchy thing. He catches the plane and so forth. That's cool and everything.
Right.
And then the movie just becomes dopey and just boring and pathetic, and it takes forever. And it's like, okay, you're more exciting. You're more cheering for the bad guy because at least he's exciting. At least he's entertaining to watch. Everything else is just sad and pathetic.
Mm-hmm.
And he finally gets to where he is, and then he's finally in the situation, and it's like then Superman is actually exposed for having a weakness, and then it's overcoming something. And
that's it. Yep.
You
gotta
that's that whole aspect, that human aspect
that we can relate to.
Mm-hmm. And
which perhaps you think the new Joker film, like you said, I think they're bringing that human side of him to what draws him to become the Joker. It's not like, oh, here's the villain Joker, and we don't know his motive. Now they got us kind of rooting maybe possibly for the bad guy, which
right,
we'll see how that turns out.
Well, what I'm interested to see is with that film is are they really going to tell a story? There's no real good backstory on the Joker. It's not widely known. You'd have to dive into comics.
Yeah.
And you'd have to be real hardcore into the comics and so forth in order to understand backstories and so forth. So that's where I'm curious to see what's going to happen. But I'm wondering, is this going to be another Man of Steel situation where, you go watch the trailers for Man of Steel, and it's like, oh my gosh, this film is going to be amazing.
Yep.
Like, you are pumped.
Right.
After those, especially the first trailer. Oh my gosh, that was beautifully done. And it complements, it builds you up, and then they start the movie, and you're all pumped and excited, and it keeps going. And like I said, right after that fight scene in Smallville, all of a sudden the movie just, and it's like, oh.
So why are we
and
not? Go ahead.
I'm part of me is super excited, but part of me is also nervous about the whole Joker thing.
Yeah.
Because is it going to be another Man of Steel situation? You've got things look so good. It looks stacked up so good. It looks like it's going to be a good story. But are they actually going to tell a story, or are they going to hack it? Are they just going to stack the cards?
Well,
or stack the show.
Yeah, and I think the reason we're so what's the word? the words aren't coming to me tonight.
Particular or
we're a
skeptical?
skeptic. Yeah, there you go. It is because
Skeptical.
we've been let down so many times by good trailers, which is why, and we'll close with this. Why are we not excited for the last Star Wars of the last 3 saga or the trilogy? I take it you've seen it. Rise of Skywalker.
My guess, nostalgia. If they wanted to bring back nostalgia and they wanted to actually use the rest of the story thoughtfully, you would have Hayden Christensen in there.
Yep.
You would have, you would bring back certain things, and you would give people closure. But I feel like all they're going to do is make it look like, oh, life went on.
Well, that and they're scrambling. Like, they got to bring in the Emperor. It's like, really? Like, you guys have done all this stuff to kind of break away from what, the root of Star Wars is, and now you're telling us that anyone can be a Jedi, and, like, we have no emotional ties to these characters because you killed them all off, like Luke and Han and all that, and we all know Princess Leia should have died in space, but somehow she can teleport herself back using all these new abilities the Force brings. Then why didn't the Force allow all these other characters to survive? And it's just like, I don't know. For me, it's a little too late, and like try. I mean, they'll still make the money, but it's like no one. I don't know. I just don't give it. I don't really care.
They killed the franchise.
Yeah, and that's my whole, I guess, point of our conversation is like, you can go from there's a written formula that you got to follow, and it's been made for decades with film, and hopefully in closing we can hope that the industry's learned some lessons, and now with the Joker and with like It 2, or I don't know what other films are coming out, but hopefully we're learning that something's missing, and I think that is the emotional tie the audience needs to have, instead of this rushed, looks good to the eye. Because honestly, that's all that people would say is, well, Star Wars Last Jedi, it looked good. It looked good. I thought it was cool looking. It's like, well, sure, CGI makes things look awesome, but a 2 lightsaber that can then like be a switchblade to like a Darth Maul type. It's like, that's cool. Is that really how you're gonna try to get people into the theater? You know what I mean?
It's the same thing. It's what happened to Star Wars Land in Disneyland.
Yep.
Everywhere I keep hearing, nobody's interested in the place. There's no nostalgia.
Yep.
There's no connection. It's dead.
Yep.
And people don't even like Star Wars Land. It's like, it's okay.
Right. It's just so
and it's like, you
overdone.
Spent that much money on it.
And they're like, well, you guys love Star Wars. You're supposed to love it too, right? It's like, well, sorry, you've just thrown everything up against the wall and hope something that is, sticks. Whereas, like, just stick to the script. Like, don't try something new. Don't reinvent the wheel.
Well, like you pointed out, like the whole Princess Leia flying back in. I was like, oh, so you're just going to crap on everything that has previously happened, where it was it was believable.
Yes.
Whereas now it's like, oh, you just ran out of imagination. And then, like, oh, so then we're going to get political.
Oh, that's a
And
whole
now
nother.
we're gonna get.
We'll have to say that for another podcast because that's a whole nother topic in itself.
Then we're gonna get PC and
Oh.
all this stuff, and it's like, where's the storytelling?
Right. It's just storytelling.
The storytelling.
It's black and white. Like, let's not miss that. So, all right, Isaac, we're on that 25-minute mark. I think we'll have to continue this conversation for another podcast. I appreciate you coming on to the Anything at All podcast, and we look forward to our next conversation.
All right, we'll catch you next time.